Hey everybody, and welcome back to Nat Chat. I'm Nat Eliason, and as you probably know, we're exploring what to do as a student or recent graduate dissatisfied with the current college system and typical post-grad career tracks. In this episode, I'm joined by Darwish Gani. Darwish started down the investment banking path in college, but as he approached graduation, he decided that he wanted to work on something he was more passionate about. After starting one company and working as a product manager at another startup, he decided to start an alternative education program focused on supplementing college students' education with more hands-on coding work. That company, Horizons, offers summer programs for students to get an intense, hands-on programming bootcamp and apprenticeship over the summer. And their latest experiment, Horizons 1, is a 2-year tuition-free program to teach students everything they need to know to work in tech and then set them up with a co-op program where they can apply those skills hands-on. We talked all about how Darwish started this company, what his motivation was, how students learn during it, how students can self-educate, why STEM jobs don't get the same sex appeal as traditional industries, and some of his goals for influencing how young people learn and enter the workforce. I'm also releasing this episode a little early since registration for Horizons 1, the 2-year co-op program, is currently open until the end of June 2017. So if you check it out and it looks like a good opportunity, I would definitely encourage you to apply. I don't get a kickback or anything. I just really like what Darwish is working on, and I think it could be a great opportunity for anyone listening. And with that, let's bring on Darwish. Darwish, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Nat.
Yeah, I'm excited to chat because our mutual friend Ashwin introed us because he saw the podcast was starting. He knew that you were working on this really cool, exciting company that he turned me on to and introed us, and now we kind of get to chat. And I think that what you're working on is going to be really relevant to a lot of the students listening. So why don't we just jump right in with it? What is Horizons? What are you trying to do?
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so Horizons essentially is a school of technology, and today we offer kind of two main courses. We offer immersive, summer and study abroad programs for students to come and learn to code, and then apply those skills to launch careers in software engineering, entrepreneurship, whatever it may be. But first and foremost, we're teaching people how to build real products. How do you build the types of products that you and I use every day? And the second thing our school offers also is starting this fall, we're launching a new program called Horizons 1, which actually is a 2-year tuition-free technology co-op program. So what that essentially means is I will take you, I will train you, I'll put you into a job, have you actually work for a year, and you will leave that experience being comfortable both with your career trajectory and life trajectory, and also having gone with probably an offer in hand. So Horizons, essentially all we do is we build and propel people's promising careers in tech.
But it's specifically focused at current college students, right?
Yeah, so we are specifically focused at college students today. That is correct.
So then how does this tuition-free co-op work? Because you said that it's a 2-year program?
Yes, a 2-year program, and essentially the way it works is the first year you'll come to us and we will essentially take you from the intro pieces of software engineering and teach you essentially for an entire year. And when I think about teaching you for a year, I think about us less as teachers and more as coaches. And we're training you for a sport, and that sport in this case is being promising in industry. And so essentially in that full year, we are giving you very, very highly technical skill set of being able to build real products, and also teaching you how the actual world of technology works. So it's not this is a trade school. This is this is what I'd call a high potential focused trade school. We want to give people the things they need to launch the highest potential careers in the space. So that first year, you're with us, you're learning hand in hand with our instructors, our founding team, our operations staff. We are here to get to essentially build you up to be a better version of you. And then there's a part of learning that I believe strongly believe can only happen when you're working. And when I think about what the goal of any student probably graduating college is to put themselves in the steepest and most promising career trajectory possible. And the first 2 years when you're working, that's what you're doing. You're trying to get to that first place that allows you to do that. And so Horizons 1 just takes you from let me build you all the skills you need and also get that first piece fully started. So the second year, we actually help place you into promising high growth, innovative technology companies and have you work for the entire year. The second year is actually any salary that comes in will actually be used as tuition for the program. For some students who come from lower income backgrounds, will actually cover your housing and living costs. For students who don't come in, you can think of this just as going to college for free. You cover your own housing and food, but everything else, you come, you learn, you work, and you leave with a very high level of confidence and also a very practical skill set.
So is the idea that this would replace college for students or augment it?
Yeah, I think college serves a different purpose for different people. And so like I think like one of the big things that happens, especially like in Silicon Valley or San Francisco, is this idea of like disruption, replacing, et cetera. And I like to like temper that a little bit in that like you should acknowledge like where the current thing works, who it works for, and where it doesn't. And so I actually think that like what we provide is we provide a jumping point for someone who wants to like jump in, get their hands dirty, and knows that they want to like work in the realm of tech. I think for some people that very much could replace what is today like college. I think for some people it's better done after college. It's probably better done like in lieu of like a master's program, or maybe like your junior senior after your junior senior year. This is the time you're ready to like think about taking a step like this. So I think like or maybe just even if you didn't go to college, you spent 2 3 years figuring out what you want to do. That level of maturity is kind of needed to say, hey, I want to dedicate myself to this thing, and like I'm then going to go and do it. It's like I want to run a marathon. Like you probably have to like know you want to run for a bit, know that you enjoy sports, you don't want to like go in that direction. But when you're ready, I will put you on the track and make that a promising one. And so I think that like we'll start out when we look at our first set of students we're going to be talking to, they're primarily going to be graduating seniors from college who probably feel a little lost, don't know exactly what they want to do, have been pointed in this direction of like technology, entrepreneurship, engineering, and we're going to like take them all the way through that road, show them that world. But I do think that as we grow, it's going to be very natural for many high schools, especially with like the way culture is being built today in schools and technology becoming more and more accessible and STEM becoming more popular at the younger ages, for students to say, oh, this actually could be a better experience for me than going to college. But I think, there will always be a need for world-class liberal arts institutions, are always needed for world-class engineering schools. We are just a different track, and that track is one that's industry focused. If you want to be like a researcher or professor, this is not where you go. But if you want to, your goal is just to like maximize like your impact and value in industry, specifically in like technology today or software focused technology, I think like that razor sharp focus that we have will give people outsized outcomes.
How does it compare to something like General Assembly?
Yeah, I think General Assembly is in a different market. So General Assembly is like in a retraining market. They're taking folks that are of a much older age and they're teaching them like they're usually folks who I think are switching careers, not launching careers. When I think about like where I was when I was a senior in college, I'm thinking about starting my career and putting myself on the steepest like slope possible. I want to learn more than anything. And like yes, I also want to like make good money, but most importantly, I want years 3 to 10 to be like where I really start to hit my stride. I think General Assembly, I think the mindset that someone has in a program like that is a little different. It's like, hey, I've been working this job, but not necessarily great. I need to like jump into another job quickly. I need to start paying well. I need to like and that's like my ending point. I think the reason we call it Horizons One is a starting point. It's not the end. This is like the start. So Horizons One is just the beginning, I think, of that journey that you'll take. And our goal is to make the most promising, exciting one possible. So I think like General Assembly solves a very real problem. In many cases, they're actually solving a symptom of the problem. The real cause, though, is that there's been a set of people who haven't been able to figure out what they actually need to do to get to where they want to be. And I think we've developed a model that will hit them at the right age that will give them even better outcomes. So I think like a General Assembly will exist. We will exist. We will hit different types of customers and students. And I see ourselves very much hitting a very interesting demographic, and one that I relate to very personally, is that really fits the my trajectory over the last 5 6 years as to like the experience that I had personally.
Yeah, tell me about that. What in your experience makes you really interested in this issue and in helping college students get this kind of leg up and supplemental education in technology?
I wish I like thought about this more carefully and I can nail all the points down. But it's a very loaded question. But essentially, when I look at maybe I'll just tell you my story.
Yeah, tell us your story.
That's the best way to illustrate like where I found learning and like the types of perspectives that came to me, and that influences like the thinking I have in Horizons. So I grew up in Georgia. I went to like a kind of like Tiger Mom type like public school, hyper magnet school. I took computer science when I was there for 3 years. And in Georgia though, like working at Google is not like, especially at that time, was not like Google's not a company you work at. It's just like the internet. You just go online and that's google.com. Facebook was just getting started. I didn't even have a Facebook account until I went to college itself. So like that type of like thinking of, oh, computer science can lead to something didn't exist. Like the light at the end of the tunnel wasn't there. And so I was like probably like a pretty creative person who's always looking for this outlet. And I thought like, oh, business seems like a place you can like start companies and do these things. So I went to Northwestern, a school in Chicago, and I majored in economics and math. I ended up only majoring in economics, but did a lot of math as well. And a big thing for me was like I started, I tried the thing that a lot of my friends and peers were doing, this like investment banking consulting type world. I did a lot of internships, got like a lot of real experience, but really didn't find like the outlet that like was driving me. And so I went back and really looked at the things that interested me, and they were actually around like starting companies. So my junior year of college, I actually started my first startup with my actual current co-founder at Horizons as well. It was called Altair Prep. We were building an adaptive learning platform. It was a technology-based company that essentially curated problems for students based on their strengths and weaknesses. And it was in that time that I got exposed to this entire world that I just wish I'd been exposed to 3-4 years earlier. I saw like other founders building real companies. I saw people like raising money for startups. I saw people like working in teams on problems that they're really excited about. And like some of them are failing and some of them are doing really, really amazing. Some of them are doing very, very amazing. But I was like, oh, wow, like this is like the type of thing that I want to be involved in. This is the world I want to operate in. How do I learn about this? And that was not something that was accessible to me easily where I was. And it was also a place that I like very happenstancely just like stumbled upon. And the set of things that took me from that learning experience, starting that company and building a pretty profitable business in a very short period of time to like where I am today, all came through experiential learning. They came from doing things outside of the classroom, by networking on my own, by like finding my own set of mentors and own set of people to craft experiences to, and talking to like dozens of folks across a wide range of, I talk to people in venture capital, I talk to founders, I talk to engineers at early stage companies, at late stage companies, I talk to a bunch of folks, and I had to build a mental model in a world where everyone was telling me something different. And it was in that experience that I realized that like what actually was helping me in progressing, or like what I was learning, was I was building a much better perspective than any of my peers. There are people who are better than me in math class, or people who are better than me in school. And I think I've done pretty well in school, like I did decent in all my classes and stuff, but there were people who exceptionally gifted. They were just like, they had true gifts, but when I look at like how their careers are progressing, they're just different than how mine were. And it was because of one thing that I had, which is I had real perspective. Even when I was looking at things like investment banking and consulting, I remember like my sophomore year, all my friends were looking for internships, and they all went and took corporate jobs that paid like the most. I went and actually convinced a smaller investment bank in Atlanta, to give me the job for free so I could learn the trade. And the way I got that job was I actually called up 50 investment banks, cold call on the phone. I said, hey, can I intern here? I'll do it for free. What will it take? And I eventually got 4 people to interview me. One guy gave me an offer, and I took the job. And it was like, what I started to realize was what actually led to success was not the things that what people were being deliberately trained for in school. They actually were in a different set of things. So I think as I play that forward, look at the skills and the perspectives I started to build, both in like the soft skills and as well as like the tangible skills, like being able to build real products. Those all led to like a really, I think, successful starting point for my career. And when I start to look at peers or younger siblings who want to learn the same things, I find myself giving them very actionable feedback or things that they should do, that when they do, it makes them do super well. I'll give you 2 examples of this. One was my brother. My brother was a finance major at NYU. He wanted to get into startups, and I told him, or he was interning at an investment bank, and he told me like, yeah, I'm so bored right now. Like this guy just asked me, he told me like make this big Excel file by looking up the LinkedIn profiles of 100 different CEOs. Like I went and told him I'm sick, and I left the job on the spot. And I was like, and I never went back. I emailed him out the next day quitting. And I was like, okay, you need something different. Like, here's what you should do. Go take a summer, go learn to code, and then come back to school. I don't know exactly what you'll do, but I guarantee you when you come back, everything's going to be different. And actually that trajectory is what led him to start a company with Ashwin, which led Ashwin to meet you, and the two of them took a year off of school, and that's actually how that began. And what I gave my brother was I didn't just give him skills, I gave him like real perspective about how to think about the world. And I think a lot of kids miss that. And so Horizons is very much recreating that same thing. I think we're giving people a combination of like the skill sets they need to like be empowered, to feel confident, but also like the awareness of like what's out there to actually be confident. I'll give you 2 more stories of students like who've seen this before. Another student from my class, who's a computer science major at Swarthmore University on the East Coast, and he took our class last year. And after the program, he came into me and said, Darwish, Horizons is amazing. I learned to code. I learned to like build some really awesome things here. But I'm a CS major. I could have figured this stuff out. You probably taught me what would have taken me a year in like 3 months, which is amazing. But most importantly, the thing I don't think anyone would have taught me in the way I'm heading is you humanized entrepreneurship for me. You brought in speakers and you showed me that like this is actually possible. I like no longer think of Elon Musk as like this like deified figure. I view him as just like another person who like did a certain set of amazing things really, really well. But there's no reason I also can't do that if I don't put my mind to it. And so like humanizing that to people really shows them that this is it is yours for the grabbing. When you give that to someone like really young, I think that's when things get dangerous. And if you give them enough skills like that make them also feel confident in themselves, like being able to code and things that are really valuable and hard, then then like that's when you have like real powerful like potential. Another student went to our class. He's a business major, not even interested in coding, but he was doing the internship recently. And like one of the things we have a talk at Horizons, which is all about hustling. And one of the things is like no internship you ever get is the best internships probably won't come by applying to the front door. So we show them like actually cold emails that we've sent to people in the past, directly to founders of companies, directly to investors, and say like, look, this is how we do what we do. This is what you should do when you want a job as well. And the student went and just started hitting up CEOs directly in New York of companies he wanted to work at. And he's interning in one of those companies now. And he said like, yeah, I didn't even know that was possible. So I think like those types of things, those are like kind of like small, funny, romanticized stories, like what it takes. But I think you can break that down to even what it takes when you're on day one of the job to day 360 of the job. And if you give someone the right set of, if you're actually coaching someone through that process, you can just put them on a much better path. And so that's, I think, what Horizons like really is going to allow people to do. And those are the things that have really made me excited about this, is because I actually think like success is coachable. And that's why we're doing this.
How did you get in the habit of reaching out to these people and meeting people in the space? Because I don't think it's something that you probably learned in school, right? Where did that come from?
I got extremely lucky. So like my freshman, so first off, I think that actually for me, at least personally, starts at a much earlier age. When I skipped the fifth grade in school, and I think that's the best decision my parents ever made, not because it challenged me more academically, but because it challenged me more socially. I was now put into a class where I also was really, really big into sports when I was younger. So I was the person who's like always go to school, always go to sports. And I went to like a small private school. So everything was like kind of like my world, I could just do things my way. When I got put into like a new grade, now I'm playing sports with people who are older than me. I'm like learning things much ahead of where I probably should be. And it made me like, in order to like survive, it gave me like this, I have to be proactive. I have to like go do things now. And I think that was in sixth grade, but that like stuck with me, I think, all the way through high school. I just always had this thing of, if I have a question, I'm going to ask it. If I need to get something done, I'm going to do it. So I think I was already wired that way in some ways. And a lot of that was some like, I guess, lucky nurturing, and also maybe even planned nurturing from my parents. But when I got into college, I always had this kind of proactive mindset. Now, that proactivity sometimes led me away from like traditional paths, but it was proactive in like what interested me. My freshman year, I tried to start a food eating club where essentially I think it was like the early version of like a Groupon where people could actually come together, and the campus food just sucked. I wanted us to all like create just groups of people who could go buy discounted food at like local restaurants. Didn't work out. Like a lot of things didn't like pan out as expected, but I just tried. I talked to people I needed to talk to. My sophomore year, when I wanted to like get into like finance because all my friends were doing it, I was okay being proactive, but what actually helped me a lot was I had a coach. And that coach was an upperclassman who kind of showed me how the world of finance worked. He didn't just tell me like, oh, here's what you need to know to get a job. He showed me like, here's how the people who do really, really well do really, really well. Here's how the people get there. He showed me like, if you want to cold reach out to someone, here's how you email them. Here's what the email should look like. Here's how it should sound. Here's these people actually, here's how they think. Here's how you need to talk. He just walked me through all the right things. And I was like, oh, wow. None of the stuff that he's showing me is hard, but it's just like a secret. And he had a secret that he gave me, and then he was able to coach me. And I was like, who's supposed to give everyone else these secrets, right? Like and then when I go and tell my friends, like, here's what I'm doing and why, they're like, why are you doing that? It's crazy. And I'm like, look, this is actually how it works. So you don't see. I had a coach that showed me the beginning of how to do this really well. And I started that in finance that first sophomore internship where I made 50 cold calls to get my first internship. I learned and I was no longer afraid of doing it. And then those skills, the confidence in being able to do that once for like that one internship, parlayed itself into every other thing I started doing. So whether it's hiring people for my startup, whether it's reaching out, whether it's telling a school I want to take a semester off, or like reaching out to someone to get their perspective on something, I just had like a door open for me. And once that door was open, I fully took like advantage of it. The thing is, most people don't get that door open for them. The best thing I can do is open it for you, and even better is take you through it a little bit.
Was that part of what gave you the confidence to work for yourself immediately after graduating as well?
So what gave me the confidence to do that was, by the time I had started working on my own startup, seeing a lot of other founders do things made me realize that the world was not defined in like paths. Like really, like when you start working, it's what you want to do. So when I saw other entrepreneurs being successful, and arguably actually, for sure, I saw 20-year-olds, 19-year-olds doing things that like people that I was just like, oh man, like that's amazing. That's the bar that I should like strive to do. Like, why can I not? I can do that too. Like, why can I not do that as well? So it was when I saw other people doing those things, I felt that was also possible for me. That made me like want to go after it. So I think like that gave me the confidence that it's possible. I believe that like anything is possible if you like went after it. I already had that like level of confidence. I had been built to that point. I think it was a combination of those experiences that gave me that insight of like, oh, like I should just be able to go after it. Like if I can't do it, but if I'm relatively smart, I work really hard. Like if I can't do it, then who can, right? Like who can? Like it's not they're more amazing than anyone else, but just like it didn't seem to me a possibility that like the downside could be that bad if I actually went after it that hard.
And going back to your point earlier about seeing these other entrepreneurs and having that be really humanizing, I think, that's so helpful because then when you see that they're just normal people, kind of like you, it gives you way more confidence to say like, oh, well, if they're relatively normal and they're doing it, why can't I? And even better if you if you meet somebody who you're just like, this person's an idiot. How have they raised all of this money and done all of this stuff? Like, I'm going to go do that, right? It's probably really helpful to get that exposure.
Yeah, and you'll find people who you see who do really amazing things, and it's like, wow, like they probably suck at five other things that everyone else thinks is really important, but they're really really good at certain things, and that's allowed them to be where they are. And when you hone in on that, and you see like, oh, that's actually what's allowed them to do what they do. It like reshifts like how you think about prioritizing your time or investing in yourself. And I think like yeah, even when we're in our class, one of my favorite speakers, Horizons, what we do is actually once or twice a week we bring in speakers from like the Bay Area to talk to our students to kind of show them like here's someone successful, here's how they got where they are, over and over and over, nonstop. Not just once a semester or whatever, but like continuously, repeatedly, all the time. And one of my favorite speakers is he's I think like he's in his early 20s now, but he dropped out of school when he was a sophomore and he raised $20 million for a startup. That startup is like a really large social network for high schools. And when students see someone their age, like talk to them about the things that they're doing, it's like a reality check. It's like, whoa, like everything's a little different than I thought it was. And I think that's like what people need as much as anything. And that is like how you build perspective. So that's a big part, I think, of what Horizons like provides students.
What's the best speech that you've heard from anybody that you've brought in to talk to the students?
The best speaker I heard, I think like best for me is different than best for students. I think the best speaker I heard was this guy, Puneet Soni. He was the ex-head of product at Flipkart. He was like the guy who was in charge of the Motorola Google merger. And what really he showed was, he had very humble beginnings. But yeah, I think he really showed that like his favorite quote in the line was like, the fact that all of you are sitting in the room today means that you're in the 1%. Like you're in San Francisco, you are like taking a semester off from the best university in the world to come and do this like program. You are in the 1%. Whether you come from like a good background or not, like you're now in the 1%. Like you can do anything you want to do. And like, so you should no longer ask yourself the question, like, what is the right thing for me? Or like, what is the next best thing for me? The real question you should be asking is, if you could do anything in the world, like if you actually do anything in the world, what would you do? And I think that's exactly true. If you get someone to the right base, then they can start thinking like that. I think that's all Horizons One is trying to provide you, is like that base. Like if you know you can be an engineer anytime, if you know you can like, you have the right soft skills and you know like where you fit and like what your downside is, then you can ask that question. And I think that was like it was a really awesome thing, at least for me to hear, because that's like what I want kids to like start thinking about. And so yeah, that was my favorite one.
It also gives them fewer excuses for not following through or not doing anything, right?
Yeah, totally.
When you recognize that once you have this amazing educational opportunity, you are really at the top, no matter where you initially started. I think that makes it way harder to tell yourself, oh, no, I can't do it, like disadvantage, whatever.
No, yeah, it's like, it's totally it's a nice like gut check.
How did you figure out how to teach programming and everything else that you're doing at Horizons? What is it based on?
So I was actually working at a company for a couple of years, and it was like a really fast growing company. And I had met really awesome people there. It's called Optimizely. And when I was there, actually, one of our more senior engineers who had left a couple months before me, I saw had this like knack for always wanting to like mentor and coach people. He actually switched over from being like a pure engineer to being like an engineering manager. And all that was is I saw him have this like very nurturing, like kind of caring attitude towards junior engineers and younger folks who just joined the company. And I thought like, if anyone can teach, is this guy. Like if anyone knows like two things, like one, what it takes to build a junior engineer, and two, who's going to care for them to actually get to where they can be, this is the best person to have. So Mustafa, was our first hire, and he's our lead and head instructor now. He's been an engineer for like professionally for about 8 years now. And so like I think he has a very strong bar and sense of like what it takes to build like junior level, like a junior talent, and also grow them to be senior talent. And so he actually designed and architected a lot of our curriculum. I think it's a combination of his experiences, my personal experiences like learning, that have been put together to create the program, to create a core curriculum. I think you layer on top of that like a set of values. I think that like I've developed and like the team believes in and how like what teaching should be about. And those things are like, we treat ourselves more as coaches and teachers. We believe that like confidence drives like competence just as much as like competence drives confidence. Like we try to keep people like looking up and forward just as much as anything, because we don't want to demoralize people. Like we have a set of things that we believe in that we've influenced how we deliver our curriculum, which I think are just as important as the curriculum itself. If you can teach, you can go and find any Algebra 1 textbook. You can also go and find like a lot of resources online to like teach coding. but I think the way we teach it and like the set of like, our like, I guess those are our secrets, the things that we believe that to be true that others don't. Those things influence the way we teach more than anyone else. And I think that's actually what leads to people leaving Horizons, not saying, oh, I learned to code here, but like, oh, I just think about the world differently.
You focus pretty much exclusively on JavaScript, right?
Yeah, we're full stack JavaScript curriculum, at least for our current summer and study abroad programs. In Horizons 1, that will blow up to a lot of other things.
How'd you choose that to focus on?
Like when you think about programming, like there's a lot of different starting points. I think no starting point is the correct one. Our criteria are: can somebody build products that provide real value, and can we get them there quickly? And so JavaScript was just a natural choice because it's becoming more and more prevalent. You can write mobile apps with it, you can write desktop apps with it, you can write actual applications in the browser, and you can write one language, you can write across the full stack. So it just allows us to teach. It allows us to like help you build more in a shorter period of time without paying the cost of learning like a different language. Anyone can learn a new language pretty quickly. Like our students actually sometimes will intern in jobs or work in roles where they're working in languages different than what we taught. It's more really about like the types of things you build. If you build a complex app in JavaScript, you can build the same complex app in Ruby on Rails. And so I'd rather focus my time on teaching you, exposing you to new types of problems than I would like exposing you to new type of language. So that's why we chose JavaScript really.
Do you think you would expand this beyond programming into other things, or do you guys mostly want to focus on tech?
I think that like that could be true in like the future, in the far future. But I think technology right now offers the most unique time for us to do what we're doing because of like two like real dynamics that have allowed this to happen. Like if I told you 5 years ago that I want to start it's a tuition-free school and I'm going to go take people and I'm going to build amazing investment bankers and consultants, or I'm going to go build doctors, it's not possible. Regulatory-wise, doctors don't work. Investment bankers, consultants don't work. Too much branding associated, like it's so fixed. And there's more people that want those jobs than people that can do them. More people want those jobs than seats exist today. More people are trying to get in. It's what I call like a fixed seat world, right? There's a number of roles there, and not everyone can do them. But I think technology has offered like a different dynamic, which is like two things. One is people want much more than there is demand to fill. So that allows us to come and fill that gap. And two, removes like this barrier of like, oh, you have to come from like a certain school or certain type of background or certain thing. It's just like the skills that you have. And so that combination allows us like this window by which we can insert ourselves and start funneling people from one end to the other and do so really, really well. So I think that's like why we have to nail the technology side really well first. And in the technology side, there's like a whole slew of things that we have to hit. We got to get software engineering. We have to get like entrepreneurs. There's like there's like a wide range of things in the space that people can do. It's not just like, it's not one dimensional. I think engineering is like the base of it, just as like a finance class is for business education, but it doesn't mean that everyone goes into finance to study business. In the same way here, I think people study engineering, but it doesn't mean they all become software engineers. So I think this will be like where we are for a while, but I very much do believe that the same principles that we use to train people and to give them perspective apply to other disciplines as well. It's just that those disciplines have things that don't make it possible for someone to enter like the way I'm entering now.
Yeah. Well, you brought up an interesting point there about the difference in supply and demand for good software engineers, because that does seem like a fairly rampant issue in technology today, that it's hard to find good developers, especially as you move up in levels of seniority. Why do you think that is? Why is there such a drought?
I think the real problem is STEM education in America is not glorified. It's not like the thing. I think Americans, we grow up to think about like business and law as the prestigious things. So like as kids, that's what is in our mind, is what it was in my mind. Like that's why my parents are doctors. I grew up in India, but I studied economics thinking that's business, and they're two completely different things. But just because like subconsciously, I'm just thinking like I need to be like a businessman. I don't know what that means, but that's been imbued upon me at a young age. I don't know exactly how or what, but that's a North Star that kids have in their minds today. And so I think like when that North Star gets infused with technology or something like that, or more STEM becomes more core part of it, then that will fix a bigger pipeline. I think there's actually so many people capable of being very good that don't get the opportunity to today. Even if you look at like studies about like women in computer science or women in STEM and why it's so low, it's because like they don't start it. A lot of women don't start in STEM when they first enter college, but by the time they realize they want to go in or they like want to give it a shot, they're junior or senior and they can't like do anything anymore. And it costs a lot of money to go to a master's program again. And it just like, that makes it very difficult, I think, to find the pipeline, especially when a company says like, I'm looking for a 4-year CS degree student from this school, but they're not doing that fully anymore. They're like, oh, you can build something and you can build something with these technologies and you can pass my interview, like you're in. That opens up a new door. So I think a lot of it just comes from that. And then it's a hard job. It's a hard job. It's intimidating. So that's why not everyone like jumps on it. But I think much more people are capable of doing so, especially throw aside the perspective stuff, just on the skill stuff. If you have the right coach that trains you to do so, I think it can be really be done. One of the best books I recently read is this thing called "Talent is Overrated," and it really debunks this. If you read it, it's an amazing book. And I have a talk on it now with the Horizon students. But like, it really debunks this idea that to be excellent, you have to have like certain like innate gifts. I think like anyone can do it. It may take some people longer than others to like get to the same level. But if you have the right coach, you're looking at the right things, and you know exactly what you're training. I actually do believe this is something that can be trained. So there's some people who will be trained faster, but like you got to believe it's possible in the first place, right? And what's problem is like, oh, like math is hard in 5th grade, so I stopped doing math. I stopped like thinking about math person in 6th grade. Well, guess what? Grade 7 through 12, and then all through college, you're just not applying that part of your brain, and you're just 8 years behind. Whereas like someone who like felt they were good at it, like spent 8 years thinking they're good at that type of thinking, and they're 8 years ahead in like that world for a different reason than you may actually think. So there's, I think, a lot of cultural things that probably cause this more so than like anything else. I think more people are capable of doing it. And yeah, our goal is to find those people and show them it's possible.
Well, do you think that existing computer science programs and stuff in colleges do a good job of training people to be software engineers, or is there a mismatch there as well?
I think like I don't like to like be the guy who's like, the system's all broken, et cetera. So I think like they do a lot of really good things really well. They do like provide certain things very well, but the problem is it doesn't work for everybody. There's a lot of people today, especially I think when I look at the new guard of like software engineers, where it's going to break down more and more. Specifically, I think the best example I have is about 30 to 40% of students who take Horizons are CS majors. Why are CS majors taking a program where they're studying the same thing in school? The reason is because the reason they want to do computer science is they want to build real things. They want to like create impact. They want to like change. They want to quote unquote change the world, right? And how do you change the world? You gotta build something. And like the computer science curriculum is like 1 or 2 steps removed from that. Now you have the right underpinnings to build a lot of things really well. But if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you're going to get discouraged. You're not going to want to go after it. So I think like in many ways, like that is like one axis in which they can fix. But I think there's room for some real improvement there. The other axis, which I think is like actually very important as well, is academia is not industry. You can think really like the best engineers are not today the smartest engineers. So there's a difference between that. Like the most effective engineers are the ones who are pragmatic. They can build the right thing at the right time. They can make the right trade-offs. And like they may not always have the best understanding of how every single thing works, but they like know they know like how to parse the information there to make like real impact. And so I think that's where I think like software engineering and computer science start to like diverge. And where I think that like a program like Horizons 1 would really differentiate is like we are going to deliberately say no to certain things that people in computer science learn, but say yes to other things which I think will have much more value. And those things will be intangible. They'll be intangible like soft skills, but there'll also be a lot of hard things I think as well that you're exposed to that will very much change the way that you think about, make trade-offs, et cetera, in industry. I was a product manager for 3 years before I started Horizons. And like there's like this stigma around like academics who are engineers versus like, like you'll see the PhD who's getting his first job working alongside like someone who's been an engineer for 8 years. And they argue a lot. And why they argue a lot? Well, it's because like the academic is correct. Like what he's saying is correct. It's like is a better way to do things, but it's not a more effective way to do things. It's a better way in like one definition, but in the real world definition, it's really not. And so like when we show people like what actually makes impact on the real world, I think like that focuses your curriculum and your training to like a different level. And so I think like that's the place where that gets into like a different thing between like liberal arts education versus like a trade, like teaching someone a trade. And so I think that's the place where like something like Horizons 1 will really benefit is like I say like, hey, how do I make you as valuable as possible in industry in 5-10 years and in 3 years as well? And I'm going to coach you in that process. I'm just going to show you some stuff and I'm just going to teach you some things. I'm going to be your coach for 2 years and make that trajectory as steep as possible. That's very different than like a school today, which is they're not necessarily incentivized to like lead to like the best outcomes for the kids. They're not measured on that. They have a lot of different constituencies and goals they have to do. They're research institutions. They have professors that have different competing goals. That leads to like a different like academic environment and like mindset they put you in. And I think those are all areas where you'll see differences. Not that those things are bad at all. There's a set of things that they'll do very well. But what I would say is like if you want to maximize your impact in industry and your value as like in your career, I think the things I would do are slightly different.
One of the things that I know comes up a lot with hiring developers and designers and other people right out of university is the desire to do things perfectly the first time. Because when you're used to trying to get really good grades, you don't want to turn in anything unless you already think it's perfect. So, do you guys do any kind of focus on, I guess you would call it like lean iteration or like agile development, where you're like almost letting yourself write bad code so that you can keep experimenting and get out of that school mindset?
Yeah, in Horizons 1, all you're doing is building. You're building real products with an end user in mind all the time with cutting edge technologies nonstop. And every time you build something, you're going to like talk to the class of why you built it that way, the trade-offs you made to do so. And you're going to have to say like, look, if I chose to hack this thing so I could get this outcome in these 2 weeks for this reason. And so I think you're going to get a lot of experience in that space of decision making, which I think is the most important for like being effective like on the job. And you're going to do so among like progressively harder and harder and more difficult and complex problems, which will make you a better engineer. But also it's just like thinking about those problems repeatedly over and over in the way that actual software engineers and product managers and entrepreneurs and like builders actually do. I think that that's the place where you just need repetition and practice, right? And so we want to provide like you read the book Talented or Overrated. We want deliberate practice in the space of making good technical product decisions.
What about the stuff that you say no to? Because you mentioned that as well. A lot of computer science educations will teach a lot of stuff that you guys don't think is worth focusing on at this stage.
Yeah, so I don't want to reveal too much of the secret sauce, but essentially a very interesting thing you can do is just go talk to 10 engineers who are computer science majors today and figure out what the most useful things they are that they learn from their curriculum are, the impact that they use on a day-to-day basis. And then ask them, like, what did it take you to go from like level 1 to level 2 to level 3 to level 4? And the things they talk about don't line up one-to-one with like their curriculum. And that's an important thing to note. It doesn't mean that the curriculum wasn't useful, but which parts of it actually were, like help them in that trajectory, and which ones gave them the base to do level 1 well, but which ones didn't like really impact the jump from level 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. And so if you start to hone in on those questions, you'll start to see like a set of concepts that you don't need to like hit on as much. You can open the door and let students know they exist, and they can always go learn them. Like anyone can learn this stuff. But instead, I'm going to take that time and coach you in a different set of things, and I'm going to like expose you to more technologies and problems that I think are more indicative, better resemble the types of problems you actually face in the job.
And you mentioned Talent is Overrated had kind of a big impact on you and something that you teach now. Have there been any other books like that that have really shifted your mindset around learning or education?
I actually don't read a lot. I read Talent is Overrated last month because of a debate I had with a friend, and he just sent me this book. I read it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is amazing. I'm going to give a final farewell speech to our students." I combined Talent is Overrated with like a lot of other like learnings I've had. I don't read a lot. I want to start doing it more. I'm starting to get more time to be able to do so. But the one other book that I read that really transformed a lot of my thinking towards like especially building products was actually 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel. And I think it's just like a different perspective that brings to things that like was really awesome. So I'd say like, yeah, if I was to look at readings that influenced me a lot, 0 to 1, Talent is Overrated. And then like Jeff Bezos's shareholder letters, I think changed like the way you think about company culture and management in a lot of ways. I don't see anyone else thinking in that axis the way he's thinking about it. And so it's fun to see and like really always like adjust my perspective just a little bit every time I read.
Do you have a good example from the Bezos shareholder letters?
Maybe I'll pick like the very common one, then like a more recent one. Like the original, like maybe most popular one is like being stubborn on vision but flexible on details. I think this is super true when you think about building products or building companies or like building something of value, which is like you didn't know where you're heading, but like the path to get there is not going to be exactly what you expect. And that's okay, but you got to pick where you want to go to be able to go somewhere. If you don't, you're going to go nowhere. And so like that idea, I think, is as valuable in like life as saying like this is where I picture myself in 5 years, and I'm going to take the steps. I'm going to do whatever I have to do to get there. And yeah, like step 2 and 3 end up being different than what I originally expected, but I still have the same. I still have a goal and North Star driving me in mind as it is product management. When it's like, what is the next thing I need to build that'll be most impactful to my customers? Well, like I'm Amazon and I want to take all shopping online. Well, I'm going to start with books, and like then I'm going to do something else and then something else. But like I still know where I want to end up, and like that starting point doesn't have to be the ending destination. But if I know where I want to head, I can make sure I'm heading there at each step. And it also allows you to say no to things. Like it's very easy to say no to things now because you know where you want to go. Warren Buffett has this thing where he's like, I think it's Warren Buffett, where he like says like make a list of like I forget like 50 to 100 things in your life that you want to do, and then like cut that list down to 25, then 10, and then like cross everything to like the top 3. Those are things you actually can do or do well. And the same is true like in life as it is like building products. You have to prioritize and focus, and like it's okay to explore it every once in a while and figure out what you want to do, but you got to like explore with the idea of like picking a direction so you can go after it. So I strongly believe that's true both in like life as much as it is like building products. And so that was like I think a cool thing to see how it fit with a lot of things that I had been seeing. And then the other one I think more recently he talked about was this idea of like making high velocity as the company gets bigger and bigger, and we're starting to get here at Horizons. We definitely got here at Optimizely. Was like, how do you make high velocity decisions quickly? And the idea here is companies slow down when you start to get a lot of people because a lot of decisions and conversations have to be made. Everyone has to be like in sync. And his whole thing is like, I want to make sure like there's certain decisions that need to be like every single person has to have the right eyes on to make a good decision. There's other ones that like if you do that for everything, you will not move at all. You have to be able to move like a startup even when you're not. And so like he talks about frameworks and ways that you can actually get here. And like he had this idea of like disagree but commit. Like let's talk about something. The person who's closest to the data, who's like closest to making a decision, can say like, hey, here's what we're gonna do and why. And like we may not fully agree, but like I disagree with you, but I commit with you, and I'm gonna do everything I can to help you in that direction, right? And he has like a few things with that, which I think like really, if other people just try it out, I think it kind of can help think about like, oh, this is actually what's stopping me. Is like my team is spending way too long trying to make every decision. Where like we need to divide and conquer, or we need to like sometimes we got to agree to disagree. But even though we disagree, let's commit to do so.
And going back to the Buffett, picking the top three things, because I mean, I love that heuristic as a way to try to like focus in on what's actually going to produce results and really making sure that you're not getting spread too thin. It seems like the big one for you so far has been around education form, better training, helping people go after these kinds of careers. What do you think your other one or two would be up on that list?
I think that's definitely the top, and then the other top for me is just like having like healthy, fun, like personal like relationships. I think like that's like really important for me. That's like one of the things that excited me the most about like getting into entrepreneurship in the first place was the idea of like working with your friends on an idea and like doing that like together. Like that journey sounded more fun to me than the journey of like which I was seeing in other professional like environments. So like there's a reason I'm doing this that extends beyond like the mission. It's also just like a process that I enjoy. So I think and that extends into like personal life, family life, etc. I think like if I'm doing fun, rewarding things at work, I get to enjoy my time with like my family and friends. Like those are the two things that matter to me. And the third one probably like be health. Like I just want to be healthy. But that's it. That's all I have time for. I go to the gym. I do those things. I play basketball, play soccer. I try to see my friends, and then like I try to crush Horizons.
Yeah, how do you balance that between running this company and obviously it's a huge task, but also still staying healthy and balanced?
So to be honest, I've done no balance. It's been about a year and a half now in Horizons, and there's no balance. It's just relentless work, and I've had to say no to a lot of things. I've sacrificed other things to get here. I like don't work out as much as I used to. Like I don't get to see my friends as much as before. I think that like my North Star will like guide me back to saying I need to like bring more of that back into my life. And like this is a short term, like hopefully short term thing that I'm going to like cut back quickly. I think we're starting to get to a place now where we've made some key hires. We've started to like get the engine really moving where I can start to like do that more. And doing that more is important for me to do this job well is because I have to make good decisions. I have to have fresh perspective. And so if not a place to do so, then we also don't move in the best direction. So I think it is like it will naturally get there. Like I just won't be happy if I continue in that state for too long. Right now it's okay because I know it's the thing that's needed and it has to be done. But 4 a.m. mornings for like a long period of time is not possible. And like, yeah, when I first started, I was like working 7 days a week nonstop. Now I do like 6 and I'll get to 5. And then those 5 will become more manageable 5 as time goes. But I know that's there and I'm going to work toward in steps that are okay with like me. Yeah, I think like people do talk a lot about like, can you do it without like going all in? And I think it's possible. I've just found for me that it hasn't been as possible. Like for me, at least, I feel like I got to give it 100%. And I do see there's times when there's like real tangible things that if I don't do, it will never get done and it has to be done right now. And so there's no question that I'm just going to make it happen. There's a time when like you can get away from that, but there's also times when you just got to do it.
Well, I think there's a big difference too between working crazy hours and crazy schedules because you really care about something and you really want to put your time and energy into it compared to having to work crazy schedules because you don't want to lose your job or you're in a hyper competitive environment with all of the other first years. And so I feel like from the outside, it can sometimes look like the hyper competitive, like crazy schedule in entrepreneurship is just as bad as in other fields. But I don't know about you, but for me, it always felt very different when I was in it.
Yeah, totally. Actually, I think that's 100% correct. Like, I work a lot, but I don't feel like frustrated or forced to do so. Like, I do so out of my own choice, right? Like, I come home on a Friday night, and I'm like, I can watch the Cavs Celtics game, or I can like do this, and like, all right, fine, I'm going to do this while I watch the game because I want to. I can see what it's going to give me, and I want to do it. I think if I ever got to a place where I was like, I feel forced to I have to do this, I really don't want to. That's when I start to like really try to course correct. But I haven't been there yet. I've enjoyed what I've done so far. I remember like when I was working at this investment bank my junior summer of college. I was playing the game really well. Like I did all the right things, like emailed the MDs in the early days. I got all the biggest deals. I think I was like a pretty highly ranked quote unquote analyst or whatever, maybe analyst intern. But the day that really top me being like I think a top performer to being like the lower end performer was I was working on a Sunday, and I'm really big into food. I really like eating. I really like to have good meals, like when I'm cooking and eating out. Like that's a really important thing to me. And like so Sunday brunch time, and I was like, hey, I'm going to go step out, grab a quick bite, and I'll be right back. And my analyst said, no, you can't. You got to finish this now before you go eat. I was like, what do you mean? I gotta eat. Like I haven't eaten. It was like food, like I gotta go eat. And so like when he said that, I was just like, this will not work. This is not possible. That's the straw. I've put in everything. I've done all the right things. Like I've played this game, but I can't like sacrifice that. And so like I remember like that was like the tipping point. I was like, oh yeah, like this is insane. Funnily enough, now I skip lunch and dinner all the time. Sometimes I get into like these binges where I just work from morning to night. But it's okay. I chose to do so. No one told me that was the case.
It's a big difference when you're the one calling the shots than when somebody else is telling you can't eat.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wish you had learned sooner? This could be about entrepreneurship, about learning, about work, life, just anything that's had a big change in your mindset or what you're doing.
I think I'm happy with like the trajectory I've taken. I sometimes wonder that as well, but like I think the biggest thing I learned is like the importance of perspective, and I think I naturally had the right tendencies to like capitalize on that when I was in school or like as I was like growing up. But I think like it wasn't a cognizant thing for me. Like actually, if you told me today as a high schooler, I know what I know now, I think it would have been so dangerous. Like the way I think about things would just be really dangerous. This is why we're starting a high school program at Horizons, because I think we can give kids that infectious like belief in themselves. But I think I just wish I knew like what it took to be successful in whatever your definition of successful is. I wish I had like the mindset to at least know to like hone in on like really understanding what drives that. Whether it's like career, personal, whatever it is, like if I had the mindset of saying like kind of just like look ahead and try to like really understand like what it takes to be there, and like I'm going to like go and focus on those things. If I just had that mindset, if that was a more explicit mindset to be in earlier, I think it would be very interesting. I think I like naturally took steps that allowed me to develop that, and I was kind of heading in that direction slowly. But I think if I had that like as a junior in high school, it could have been very interesting. It could have been very interesting.
What about if somebody in college, maybe a sophomore or junior, who themselves just did an investment banking internship, reached out to you and said, hey, I really don't love this track that I'm on. I want to switch into something maybe more STEM related, like what you ended up doing. What advice would you give them besides attending Horizons?
Well, yeah. Well, essentially, before what I would do is I would try to mimic everything that Horizons is. So I would say like, okay, you should do these things. You should like first, you should go and learn to code. I'd give them a few different ways to think about it. Then I would say, all right, then you need to go start conversations with XYZ people. Your mental model doesn't exist right now. You need to build one. You may not like fully appreciate everything someone says, but you need to start hearing it and like picturing it. So go talk to like 3 engineers, go talk to 3 product managers, talk to 2 people in VC, talk to whatever. You make 3 of those connections yourself a week, I'll make 1 for you. If you make 3, I'll give you 1. And so like I would do stuff like that. And so like that's the exact thing that I would give kids before. So I would say like go talk to people who do things that you're interested in, and then like go pick up like real skills that will make you feel confident in that direction. Those are the 2 things I would say. But if you told me that today, there's truly nothing I think that can beat what we built at Horizons, because now it's not just me saying do it. It's extremely deliberate, big team, super smart people like who've dissected every single piece. Right? We have one guy who just thinks about how to bring in the best speakers that open up lines. We have one person who's thinking like all the time about how to make you the best engineer you can be. We have one person looking at the full picture. That's me. We have like that entire thing happening. So can't compete with it fully.
That's great. I mean, I'm super excited about what you guys are working on. I mean, like you said, I don't think there's a lot out there that can compare with that, especially for current students. And I think hopefully, even if, students listening to this don't have the opportunity to attend, I think there's a lot they can take from it.
Yeah, totally. And a big part about Horizons 1 as well is like is tuition free. We're really trying to increase accessibility of the program. We had a student who took our program in our first class last summer in Philadelphia. He was a sophomore, came from like a lower income background. We knew he couldn't afford the class. We told him like, look, just take the class. When you graduate 3 years from now, you can like pay us back. The story was too good. The potential was there. Really low GPA, but like he had like some real talent for programming. You saw it. Like the GPA stuff was just a environmental thing more than anything. We saw all those pieces. We took him on. He's now taking a year off of school working as a software engineer. He's paid it back, and he's going to go back and finish up his last 2 years after that. So like I think for us, accessibility is super important. So the only thing to that is like I think if you really want this stuff, like I think we've built a program that allows it.
Is it rolling admission? Can people join anytime, or how does that work?
So right now, our first Horizons 1 program will start in the fall. So we are enrolling admissions towards that. We're actively accepting our first batch of students right now as we speak, actually, and we'll be full soon. But like fall 2017, fall 2018, there'll be classes.
What's the application deadline for fall 2017?
We have early decisions coming out like May 31st. And I would say like anything after There's no deadline because it's rolling, but I would probably say anything after like mid-June, seats may be full.
Okay, cool. Well, I'll make sure that we get this out before then so that if anyone listening is really inspired, they can go check it out.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, Darwish, this is a lot of fun. I'm really glad that we got to chat about this, and I think we covered a lot of really useful, interesting ground. Aside from the Horizons website, is there anywhere else online people should go to find out more about you and what you're working on?
Horizons website, you can, if you check out my LinkedIn as well, you can pass it along. My email's in there, so you can shoot me a note at any time. Happy to chat.
Great. Well, thank you so much again. This was great. And like I said, we'll get this out, and hopefully some people come check out Horizons 1.
Sweet. Appreciate that.
Thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Nat Chat. If you enjoyed the podcast, please subscribe to Nat Chat in iTunes, Stitcher, Overcast, or wherever you get your podcasts. Second, if you're trying to take advantage of some of the information from this episode, be sure you check out the show notes at nataliason, nateliason.com/podcast, and find a friend, because implementing a lot of this stuff is much easier if you have somebody to do it with. And finally, if you enjoyed this episode and you've been enjoying other episodes of the podcast, please leave it a review on iTunes, Stitcher, wherever you listen to your casts so that more people can find it. This is the best way for it to get some more exposure and to make sure that I can keep bringing these episodes to you. With that, thank you and have an awesome rest of your day.